Hi, everybody. Welcome to our another episode of Facebook Live. It's Nancy Reyes with For Your Canine.
And Joanne Soyke with Fur Better, Fur Worse.
And Lisa Bataska with Canine Defined.
Today we have a treat, so let us know you're out there. I know this particular topic was shared quite a lot via Facebook, so I hope whatever platform you're listening on, try to put your questions on the chat. Hi, Ronnie. And so today we have Rita Hogan. She's a canine herbalist and has been for 20 years. So we're going to kind of turn it over to Rita to tell us a little bit of how she started on her journey. And this is not to replace your vet. This is just more supplemental information for the health of your dogs, right? So we're big on, as you probably figured out, big on holistic and natural type of healing. So when I saw Rita in another podcast, I thought, this is great. We have to have her on to our show. So Rita, tell us about how you got started and what you do specifically. I know you do a lot of stuff. So
I do a lot of stuff. So I've been practicing, I think this is my 20 year. I got started in about 2023. But I have herbalism in my blood. My grandma was an herbalist, but she just was a mother who raised her kids on natural methods because it was the Great Depression. So they didn't have a doctor. She didn't have a doctor at all, just a midwife, and she had 16 kids. So it was a situation. Wow. I know, right? And my mom is going to be 92 in just a couple months. So it was a long time ago, but and then my dad was a prolific farmer who knew how to use the plants that were around him for our, chickens, pigs, cows, horses, ponies, things like that. In fact, our family dog lived until she was 26. Well, actually, it's between 24 and 26. We still can't get to a consensus. If my dad was still alive, I could get the answer, but he's not. So, yeah, and, she was not spayed, not vaccinated. She lived on farm scraps, was outside all day long until we, went to bed. She was, hung out with me constantly. She ate raw milk and raw meat, and she ate cooked meat, and she, we ate really good foods at that time. And so that's what she ate. And she lived so long. But back then that was the norm. So now we've got, 8 and 9-year-olds being called geriatric, and which,
yes.
I just released a new version of my podcast, and it was kind of like a rant about that aspect that, we're starting to get kind of, I hate to use the word programmed, but conditioned that a 8 and 9-year-old dog is a geriatric dog. And that is not true at all. But I got my start, in kennel-free boarding. So I opened a kennel-free boarding facility in the early 2000s, I think 2024. I did it for 12 years. And I used to hang out with, 20 and 30 dogs, sometimes 40 dogs, depending if it was a holiday, completely off leash in the Cumberland Mountains in Tennessee. And when I first started, I really noticed that the dogs that were eating Purina and kibbles and bits and science diet and, kind of a lot of stuff made by Mars, a candy company, they were exhibiting these behaviors that just didn't make them conducive for kennel-free boarding. And so I developed a little list of food, and there was 30 foods on there. There were some, of course, raw food, which I only had a couple clients that did raw food, but raw food and freeze-dried food and air-dried food, and then some high, the kibble hierarchy, some high-end kibble foods. And basically, you had to feed your dog on that list or you couldn't board with me, because the dogs were crazy and they wouldn't listen, and they were fighting, and they were upset and anxious and self-harming. And I noticed that it was it was always the dogs on these particular foods. And so I started looking at those ingredients. I started looking at behavior. And I like literally had a spiel that I would give my clients when I would make them come for an interview with their dogs first, you know, and they would sit down at the table and I just, you know, stay there while I deal with your dogs. And I'm going to take your dogs for a walk and see if they're conducive for being here. Because we didn't use kennels. They just slept in the house as a community, you know, getting along with new dogs and stuff. And it was crazy, the behavioral issues. And I realized that it was a lot like shooting yourself in the foot and then trying to climb a mountain, like not dealing with food first in the behavior department. And the perfect example I have of this is I had this one client who had like a brindle dog, kind of like maybe a pit mix. I loved him so much. And when he came out for an interview, he was mildly aggressive, mildly. He started fights and stuff. And I said, what food are you on? And he said pedigree, and he worked for Mars. And I said, well, in order to board here, you're going to have to change your food. And he said, well, I get free food. I said, well, that's not my problem. Change your food. And he said, well, why? I said, because your dog is aggressive. And I think it has a lot to do with his diet. Come back in 2 months and I'll board him for 3 days for free. And we'll see if he can stay. And I boarded him for 12 years. I loved that dog. And he was a completely different dog. Even he said, I can't believe the difference in my dog off that food. And of course I said no treats as well. So I gave him a list. I told him he could give us treats. I said, I'm sorry. And I told him I will know if your dog is eating this when he's not being boarded here. And he's like,
yeah, sure.
Yeah. I'll know. And so he kept him on that food, and it was a travesty because of course he had to pay for it. But that dog was so awesome. And I think through the years, he thanked me and thanked me and thanked me, because then he could bring him in public places. He could have him off leash. He was such a different dog because his nervous system was completely hyperstimulated with all of the sugar and there's lots of plasticizers in some of those foods, like kibbles and bits. And I forgot that other one, Beneful has plasticizers. Yeah. And those types of residues, they start coating because they mimic oil and they're petroleum based. And this is where we go back in and we get into the herbalism part, but they're petroleum based and they mimic oil. And so they coat the nerve cells and they mess with it. It's kind of like folic acid. So folic acid is added to things, and folic acid is a synthetic form of folate. It's referred to folic acid when it's in the body, so it kind of messes with your brain. But in the body, it's folic acid. But if you see folic acid on some bread or dog food or something like that, folic acid is synthetic. And what it does is it binds to the folic acid receptors in the body, and then natural folate can't bind. So you have dogs that can't methylate because of that. And it's the same thing with those plasticizers. They start coating the nerve cells. And so you get a dog that's completely hyperstimulated, has no access to their vagal function, which makes dogs rest and relax and digest. And they're stuck in sympathetic excess, which is fight or flight. So these dog foods are so powerful. They're, like Beneful is like drugs. I've seen dogs get off Beneful. It takes them a good 3 to 6 months to see the difference off that food, to get those residues out of the body. So, after I started seeing these things, I realized that I was going to have to take my herbalism that I was practicing for myself and start mapping it on to canine physiology. And so that's what I started doing. And I've spent the last 20 years doing it. And I've worked with some really great mentors out there. Most of my mentors are human herbalists. But I took that and mapped it out. There are some good canine herbalists out there. Like myself, I think many of them are more animal-based. I'm very specifically dogs. I have been dabbling a little in cats. I can do cats, but I mainly focus on dogs. And it's been a really great journey. It's been very eye-opening, and most people aren't using herbs, how shall I say, correctly with animals, because what happens is we have been pharmaceutically trained over the last 50 to 60 years. So when you stop, when you don't want to use a pharmaceutical, you grab hold of an herbal substance and use it like you would a pill, like you would a pharmaceutical. And that just doesn't, a lot of it doesn't cross over. And so herbalism is a whole completely different methodology, a completely different system of medicine than pharmaceutical medicine and Western medicine. And so people, you know, they tend to use more of something when they need to use less. They tend to, like, let's just use this as an example. So this little pamphlet, 10 herbs for the happy, healthy dog. Okay, this is a great example. So you see a lot of these articles on the internet. 10 herbs for arthritis, 10 herbs for leaky gut, 10 herbs for nervous dogs, you know, and they'll give them all 10. And it comes from a place of desperation. It comes from a place, the intention is care and love, and it comes from a very loving place to help your dog. Because a lot of people are so, I keep looking down here. I need to look here. A lot of people are so just, well, you know, really like desperate to find answers to help their dogs, because what we're doing as a society for ourselves and our dogs isn't working. I mean, Western medicine has saved my life twice. Emergency medicine saved my life twice. I'm not saying anything that. I think that an integrative approach could really, like, if Western doctors started being more open-minded and having, instead of just kind of blocking it off and saying, okay, what can I learn from these people that know how to do, or, you know, that know herbalism, and then, you know, we can take what we know works in the Western medicine and bring them together. And so, but a lot of people will give their dogs like 10 herbs all at once, hoping for the best. And what you really end up with are side effects. And a lot of people, well, it's natural. There's no side. That's not true at all. And, you know, it's all about dosage. And then, you know, more is better. We've been conditioned for more is better. We've been conditioned that it needs to work now. Now, some herbs do, some different types of herbs. Like, for instance, I'm at my desk, so I have all these things at my desk. This little remedy is called a plant stem cell remedy. And these actually do work quite quickly, but it depends on what you're using it for. Now, I have a mild case of hypothyroid, right? And this is one of the remedies I use for my thyroid. If I have any pain, like I'm very in tune with my body. So if I have any pain in my thyroid, I know that I can take a couple drops of this and it will be gone in like an hour. Okay. That's just a mild kind of like, meh. Whereas if I was using this to cure my hypothyroid, it may take months to a year. So it's, you know, you have to know what you're expecting, because a lot of people don't understand what those expectations in healing are.
Right. So let me ask you, Rita, so what are some of the things, because I know a lot of people, some of the big things, and you guys can jump in, is allergies, right? Some dogs have environmental allergies versus, well, food allergies are a little, well, I don't know if they're easier, but they're.
But they all come, the food allergies and environmental allergies, not 100%, but I would say definitely 98% of them all stem from the same issue, which is liver, the dog's liver. So environmental allergies, if you can, in fact, I'm going to speak on this in San Diego in just a few weeks. Environmental allergies are in my opinion, they are a liver that can't keep up. And so what happens is if a dog has a healthy liver, and not just liver, but the lymphatic system, which is like this nervous system through the body, it looks like the nervous system, but it handles toxins and fat soluble nutrition. So the lymphatic system is really important, but the liver and the lymphatics really flush toxins out of the body. Really help it. And you know, you've got the liver, it detoxifies. It's got phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification. And if you have an animal or a person whose liver is not keeping up, and this is not something, well, my dog just got his blood work done and his liver's fine. So when liver shows up on blood work, we have there's a 5-alarm fire going on. We've got something major going on. This is preclinical. So this is a liver that's just not keeping up. And unfortunately, our world is so toxified right now. It's so polluted that most dogs' liver, I would definitely say, are sluggish, and they need pretty consistent throughout the year, different types of support. But just picture, like, you know, my finger. I'm trying to find a good example. My finger. Okay. So my finger looks nice and clean right now, and I can use it on my keyboard. But if I started adding things to my finger, right? Let me find something here. If I started adding a whole bunch of things to my finger and I covered it with a bunch of stuff. So like, I just put that on there. Okay. I just added that. We got that. Okay. So this is flea and tick meds. Here's some heartworm meds. We got a round of antibiotics. Okay. Then we got a round of antibiotics. We've got kibble. Then we've got, okay. And then we've got stress, anxiety, you know, like milk bone dog biscuits, or just any type of flour-based dog biscuit. We've got all this stuff. And now if I tried to type on my keyboard, I could not do it. Okay. And this is a perfect example of liver congestion. Okay. So if the keyboard is allergens, right? And my finger is the liver. If the liver is all congested like this, it can't handle it can't handle the allergens that's coming at it. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally.
So what it does is it expresses the allergens. It starts to get them, it push them out. It go onto the skin. All of a sudden you got itching, you've got scratching, you've got biting, you know, you've got the stuff that go like, oh my God, I'm going to go insane. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm going to shoot myself. That type of stuff. So all of a sudden you have, well, my dog has environmental allergens. No, your dog has a congested liver. And then of course we have food sensitivities. Food sensitivities. So the liver and the gut are best friends. They're super best friends. And the liver and the gut talk to each other. Okay. So the liver and the gut talk to each other, and see this little thing, it's called the portal vein. All right. And then you have the lymphatic system, but this is called the portal vein. And what happens is it gets very congested because of all the things that are backed up and the toxins that are backed up in a dog's body. And when the portal vein, it's how the cells get fed. Okay. When the portal vein gets congested, the liver can't do its job, and neither can the gut. And what happens is that a lot of dogs are stuck in stress and fight or flight, and they're not digesting their food correctly, or we're feeding kibble without digestive enzymes, or we're feeding cooked food without digestive enzymes, or we're feeding raw food that's energetically inappropriate, which is another show. So so then you have undigested proteins going into the small intestine. And when you have that, the immune system marks those proteins for termination. Okay. And that hyperstimulates everything, and you get itching, you get scratching, you get, gnawing, sometimes you get respiratory issues. So food sensitivities and environmental allergens all stem back to gut and liver health and lymphatic health, which the lymphatics are so important because they help the body rid the body of pathogenic bacteria, viruses, toxins, because we have these little things, and our dogs have these little nodes in our body. They're called lymph nodes. And a good picture in your head of a lymph node is like when you're driving down the interstate and you see all the trucks having to stop at those truck stops to get weighed. And sometimes they take stuff out of their trucks that aren't supposed to be there.
Right.
Well, that's a lymph node. Okay. So you're basically your toxins and your nutrition are driving down the road. They got to pull over, and the lymph nodes are going to take all of the toxic stuff out of the truck, destroy it, and then let you keep on going. And lymph system is really important. And the thing is that most people don't even know what it is, and they don't know how to stimulate it, and they're not doing it. And dogs get lipomas, they get cancers, they get autoimmune disease, they get food sensitivities and environmental allergens.
Yeah, because there seems to be a lot more autoimmune out there in the world.
A lot.
People and dogs, right?
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, you can never underestimate stress.
Oh, yeah.
So, Rita, let me ask you, don't you feel like the lymphatic system will just store up all of that extra liquid when the liver can't process it, right? So that's sort of where those lipomas come from. That's sort of where that inflammation sits.
So in a nutshell, because the lymphatic system, again, is another show, but in a nutshell, yes, Joanne. So my mentor taught me this. Taught me that lipomas and fatty deposits, and also, I'll say in a minute, but fatty deposits is basically, he called them satellite livers, right? Because the liver, the body is fascinating, and the body is always trying to get back to balance. Mm-hmm. And it will do this in weird ways. So it will push out toxins to the skin for a hot spot, right? And when a dog has a hot spot, you have a liver issue. Or sometimes you get bit. A dog gets bit, and it's different, but it's not usually the norm. Or a lipoma is a satellite liver, because if you've ever seen the inside of what's in a lipoma, and I have multiple times, because lipomas can exit outward.
Yes. It's gross.
There's like hard, crusty little pieces of calcified material in there. Mm-hmm. There's fat cells, there's blood, there's toxins, but it doesn't smell. It hardly ever smells. Mm-hmm. And so, but you can see that the body is storing that in a nice little easygoing pouch, and it just keeps it there. And some lipomas can get reabsorbed into the lymphatics and blood system and exit out the building as waste. And some will make a hole and exit out that way. The big ones, it's good that they exit out that way, because it's really hard to get the body to absorb all that toxins again. And I'm sorry, Joanne, I keep looking at you and Nancy, and I need to look at the camera. So I apologize.
You're fine.
It's just, you are right on. It is the body, it's the liver's way of taking care of itself, because it just can't take all of those toxins when it doesn't have support and when it's sluggish.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that lipomas are a natural way of aging, but no, lipomas are too much dampness. So if you've ever heard dogs can be damp.
Yes.
If your dog has a lipoma, your dog is damp. And so too much dampness and a sluggish liver for sure.
Yeah, because my 14-year-old shepherd never had a lipoma ever. Anyway, so Karen was asking, She wanted to get some thoughts on the use of milk thistle to help counteract toxins from heartworm and tick meds.
So anyone that's on heartworm and tick meds, there's two things that I would do, and put them on milk thistle, and keep them on milk thistle as long as you're giving those meds. And there's another remedy, and this remedy works for most dogs. It's called skull cap. And as a common, skull cap can refer to Scullateria latifloria or Scullateria bacladensis. And so I'm talking about Scullateria latifloria. Okay, Latin names are important when it comes to herbalism because the common names can be so many things, depending on where in the world you are. It's Scullateria latifloria, and that helps support the nervous system because flea and tick meds attack the nervous system. And I did, Nancy will give you a link to a free, it's absolutely free flea course that you can take, and it'll teach you a lot about fleas and how to use natural methods for them. And if you need the big guns, which ones to avoid and which ones to use. So, yes, you really want to protect the nervous system and the liver when you're using those types of remedies because they're super hard on the kidneys. They're super hard on the liver. And, you know, they are a toxin. They're just not, they're not big enough to kill your dog, even though many dogs have died from like things like Prevecto.
Yes.
And the Seresto collars, and they're, I think, like Simparica has caused a lot of deaths, I think. And then you have dogs that never recover from like a nervous system attack. And so what I recommend is before you ever give those, to put your dog on milk thistle and skull cap right away and keep them on it. And then if you are giving them, definitely put them on milk thistle and skull cap. The thing with milk thistle, there's a couple of things. Just because something is natural does not mean it can't cause side effects. A couple of side effects to think about when it comes to milk thistle. Milk thistle has an influence on the kidneys. So if your dog gets incontinent on milk thistle, you want to cut back on the dosage or use something else for the liver. Milk thistle is not the only game in town. Use something else. Now, that's very seldom will that happen. But if nothing, like you haven't done anything else but add milk thistle and all of a sudden your dog is leaking, right? It's the milk thistle. It's the milk thistle. Another thing with milk thistle is that it can cause aggression. Anger and aggression come from the liver. So if you have an aggressive dog, you have a liver imbalance. And so aggression can come from the liver. And so milk thistle can help with aggression, but anything that helps can also cause most things, not anything, but most things. If it can help it, it can cause it in the right dosage. So in aggression issue, if you do milk thistle and your dog gets very agitated or gets a little mildly aggressive, it wouldn't be majorly aggressive, but it would be mildly aggressive, then you need to stop using milk thistle, work on the liver, and then you can probably reintroduce it or introduce it, stop it for about a week, and then introduce it at a lower dosage. One of the things about milk thistle is best as an alcoholic tincture. It does not extract well in glycerin.
So not the pills. So not the pills that they sell.
Oh, you can give the pills. Yeah, you can give the pills, but it works well as an alcoholic tincture, and you don't need a lot. So for like, did you say you had a German Shepherd, Nancy?
I do.
Okay, so a German Shepherd in a tincture, I'd probably give about 7 drops twice a day. And milk thistle is very bitter, so I would add water to taste. Like I'll taste it myself, and if I can stand it, then I'll give it to my dog. if I can't, I'll add more water, but it's very like, ugh. So, but it's important for tinctures to be given in the mouth, if all possible. When they're given in a food, then they're digested as food through the stomach. And you really want an alcoholic tincture to go right into the bloodstream and bypass the stomach. Now, you can use milk thistle as the seed, the dried seed, and that's going to be digested by the stomach. So say, for instance, you gave the milk thistle tincture, your dog got aggressive, then it's probably way too much. So you might want to use the pill and have it be digested by the gut, which will have a different effect in the body.
Okay.
But they're fine to use either or. And if you're going to use it for a flea and tick remedy, I would just use the pills in the gut and keep them coming. Keep them coming as long as you're on that remedy.
So Rita, when you're talking about tinctures and pills and seeds and right, I know it matters where you buy these things, right? So these aren't grocery store things you're talking about purchasing.
No.
Can you talk a little bit about, and maybe if you have specifics, if not, like what to look for in when I'm buying something, I'm not purchasing it for $6.99 on the shelf at the grocery store, right? Like
we're not
stuff.
Purchasing herbs at Walmart, and if you are, then, you need to put them back on the shelf. There's in the United States, I can't really speak to the different parts of the world, but in the United States, there's some really good herbal companies out there. There's Animal Essentials, herbalist Greg Tilford, who Herbs for Pets by Greg Tilford. Great book here. Great book. Really good starter book. Greg Tilford, Animal Essentials. A human company, which there's no difference between herbs for humans and herbs for dogs. Herb Farm makes great tinctures. Pet Wellbeing I think they do mostly glycerin tinctures. But I think some of them have been extracted with alcohol and then the alcohol's evaporated off and put in glycerin. That's not the way I do medicine. So can't speak to that really, but Alchemist and Herbalist is a really good company. I use a lot of Oregon's Wild Harvest, and then I have a lot of herbalists that I know that grow herbs and stuff like that. But I carry a lot of stuff in my store. I don't carry a lot of dried stuff, but I do carry dried milk thistle from Greg Tilford, and I make a lot of my own tinctures there in the store. But I don't use a lot of tincture drops. I'm what you call a drop doser. So I believe that the body can be stimulated to heal itself unless, we're dealing with something major, like cancer or autoimmune disease or kidney disease or, something like that may need a little bit more of something. But yeah, Mountain Rose Herbs is a great place to order bulk herbs. There's a lot of really good bulk herbs places out there. But Oregon's Wild Harvest, Mountain Rose Herbs are two that are really good.
Okay. And then we got a ton of questions. Actually, there was a lot of people like dosing for milk thistle. Is that something that you would provide should they go to your site and purchase your milk thistle? You would give them a dosing for their dog?
It's on the package.
Okay.
Dosing for dogs. Animal Essentials is dosed for dogs. Their pills are dosed for dogs, but the dosage for a dog, let's just use a German Shepherd. I would probably use 500 to 800 milligrams twice a day. If it was for tick support, I'd use 500 milligrams because you're going to be giving it nonstop. If it's liver enzymes, then you're going to use more. But tincture, about 7 to 8 drops twice a day. So if you're doing a pug, I would use 4 drops twice a day, or I would probably use 300 milligrams twice a day, and then you can go down from there. So divide it in half if it's half a pug. So if it's less than 10 pounds, 150 to 200 milligrams.
Okay.
A milk thistle does not have a known toxicity.
Oh, that's good.
Just side effects potentially, right? Like you said.
Yes. Yeah. Every herb has its particulars. herbs are individuals, dogs are individuals, and so are herbs. So yeah, I mean, and it's all really all about dosage and how what's going on with your dog and how the herb is affecting him.
Okay. Okay.
Somebody, Tony, so Tony was saying the cardiologist had told us no raw. All the vets are going to tell you not to feed raw. Every single vet will tell you not to feed raw, except for
unless it's a good holistic vet, they're going to tell you that, and it's a bunch of bunk.
And Tony, here's what I would ask your cardiologist: how much science, and when you went to vet school, how much did they teach you about food and nutrition? Right. And you'll probably hear them say, "I took 3 classes, classes, not semesters."
Sponsored by Science Diet.
Yeah.
Those classes were sponsored by Purina or Science Diet. There's nothing wrong with the raw food diet. I've had 16 dogs. I have 5 now that are not included in the 16. They've all ate raw, and all of my dogs, the one that died the youngest was 14.
Right. Well, and because I have a dog that has heart issues, and she is on raw, and she's just fine. That has not affected her. She's in pretty good shape, and she's doing super well. So
yeah, and unfortunately, I know Tony has a golden retriever, so then you talk into the DCM stuff as well, and you have to read that study. Don't look at Facebook, because what they're telling you is not what is on the public media. So we digress. Anyway, yeah.
So Rita, one of the things I was going to ask you, so I know with aggressiveness and stuff, you mentioned food, which, I get that. So if you have a dog that tends to have that tendency, like you said, that aggression is part of the liver. And I know, it's not a magical cure, but is there, let's say, for example, you have somebody who has to feed kibble for whatever reason. And what can they give them to help supplement or?
So if a dog is on
liver,
if a dog is on kibble, you want to support the liver throughout the year. So I would probably maybe 2 months on, 1 month off, 2 months on, 1 month off, 2 months on, 1 month off. You want to always give digestive enzymes with kibble. Cooked food and kibble food is dead. There's no enzymes in it, and you need enzymes to break down that food. And yes, your dog produces enzymes. However, it doesn't produce enough to break down that kibble, and a lot of times doesn't produce enough to break down that cooked food, because a lot of cooked food is full of vegetables, and dogs do not produce cellulase. Cellulase is really needed to help break down that food, even though the cooking is breaking it down as well. But we need live enzymes involved here. I would definitely just keep supporting the liver. And one of the things so the liver kind of governs over aggression, agitation, things like that. But then we have worry and fear. And worry and fear is governed by the kidneys. And one of the things with kibble and freeze-dried food, air-dried food that is not raw and full of moisture, okay, it robs moisture from the kidneys. And what I mean by that is that when it enters into the gastrointestinal tract, a kibble stays there approximately 12 to 14 hours. And then if you feed twice a day, all the dog is doing all the time is processing the food. The liver is processing the toxins out of that food, the rancidity out of that food, the oxidation out of that food. It's producing free radicals. So it's so busy breaking down that kibble. So you want digestive enzymes, but you also want moisture. Okay. So you need to add a ton of moisture to your dog's food. And a lot of people say, well, it'll dilute the enzymes. The benefit does not outweigh the cost. So you need to add the enzymes. You need to add lots of moisture, because the kidneys need so much moisture to do their job at elimination and filtering the blood. And if the body needs moisture, it's going to pull it from the rest of the body. Everything's connected. And so it's fascinating. Like, for instance, most cats die of kidney failure. The reason why is because they're eating kibble. 100%. They're eating kibble, and the kidneys are dry. And when they're dry, it's no good. So, you know, I recommend that all cats get off of kibble if they can. They need moisture. And so you want to support the liver. There's a really good herb that you can make a tea with. Okay, you can make a tea. It's called nettle. And nettle is really great because it's going to give you the minerals you need. It's going to give you a lot of moisture. It's going to support the kidney. It helps support the elimination channels. You can just get dried young nettles. And if you get it at a good company, they're not going to be mature nettles, which are very bitter, and we don't want to use those. Usually it's the young nettle leaves that they harvest. You get nettles and 2 tablespoons to 8 ounces of water. Make a tea and just pour the whole thing on your dog's bowl. So let's just use a German Shepherd, and then you kind of can do the math from there. German Shepherd, 4 ounces of water. I'd say 4 to 6 ounces of water of nettle tea. You put the nettles and the tea and everything in the food, mix it around, and feed. Nettles is really good. Then you can mix in your milk thistle, break it open, mix that in, and give it to them with your digestive enzymes if you're feeding kibble. And what's really important for kibble feeders is you need to feed a ton of antioxidants. So anything that's really high in antioxidants, because kibble causes the liver to produce more oxidation and free radicals, and that's where you get the early aging, early graying. There's lots of toxins in general cause excessive oxidation. So a lot of things that are high in antioxidants are really important. I'm thinking of anything else that would be good. Oh, another thing that's good for kibble feeders is what's called Jerusalem artichoke. Okay. Jerusalem artichoke helps break down fats and oils. It helps the liver detoxify, different things coming at it. It helps with the portal vein. That's a good one, because you got to remember that kibble is made from meat meal and different types depending on what kibbles, but they put a lot of stuff in the kibble so that it doesn't smell rancid. But kibble has a lot of rancid ingredients in it, and that means that they're oxidized. Okay, they have that when you like open a can of peanut butter and the oils. Oh God, it smells dank, right? That's oxidation. When your nuts are, if you're having some like a nut butter or stuff, you smell it. You're like, or oil, just oil in general. When it smells off, that is oxidized oil. And the oils in kibbles are almost always oxidized. Mm-hmm. So that's why you need the things that are high in antioxidants.
If you live near a dog food plant, there's no, like I always joke, when you drive through this town, it smells like this town. And it's like the dog food plant. It has a very specific smell to it.
Yeah. Let's see. Karen asked any good suggestions for training treats. Because most of us usually feed like meat treats, more just like a protein, or do you suggest other type of treats?
So with treats, so meat treats are good, right? Meat treats are fine. Don't feed too much liver. Don't feed too much organ dried treats. You want to make those at a minimum. You can do like dried blueberries or fresh blueberries. You can do organic apple, different types of organic veggies.
My shepherd would have a fit if I gave him. He likes that.
My dogs are like, no.
Yeah, be like, I'm enjoying it. It depends on what your dog likes, and dogs are individuals. So they, one might like blueberries, and one would be like, I'm not eating that. Give me the meat treat. Come on. So I don't recommend using flour-based treats. It's inflammatory, and I don't care what kind of flour you're using.
Okay. That's good to know.
Let me ask you a question. Just because, like,
coconut flour is okay. Sorry.
Raw meat is we feed it, right? But it's gross. Like, I'm not going to feed that as a treat, right? Because it's messy and it's icky in your hands and all of that.
No.
So, like, let's say I wanted to use cooked chicken, right?
Yeah.
Would you say, like, if I'm using a cooked meat because it doesn't, you know, break down as well, and I'm already giving probiotics or something like that, would dandelion or dandelion root as like a couple times a week be something that might counteract that, or be like helping to flush or helping to?
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with the cooked chicken. You know, try to pastured chicken, you know, supporting small farmers for pastured chicken. The more requests and uses we have for pastured chicken, the better. That creates more farmers that are using, that are raising pastured chicken. But dandelion root's excellent for the liver. It's cooling. Yes, but I mean, it depends on how much cooked chicken you're giving. But I might start adding like a digestive enzyme to my dog's food.
Okay.
If you're doing a lot of cooked treats.
Yep. And I know this is probably another show, but do you recommend rotating, like if you're a raw feeder or whatever, rotating that protein on the dog in the dog's diet? Like,
yes, I do.
Rotating like beef or pork.
To find 3 proteins they can handle and rotate. Yes,
okay.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, because I know that's for sure something that you want to find what, like you said, what works and then rotate that.
Yeah.
What was the other question? Is there any specific thing you would for sport, like do agility or fast cat or lure coursing? Anything extra you'd put for that diet versus anybody else, any other dog diet?
I support the nervous system, so I'd be working with things like skullcap, lion's mane mushroom. Definitely support the nervous system. I mean, it's or like if you're doing scent work.
Yes.
So scent work is tricksy because they're using essential oils that have toxicity to animals. So the anise and the what they use, they use
clove, vetiver,
and
birch.
Yeah, so those are all toxic to dogs, every single one of them, and they're smelling them all the time. So I have a friend that does scent work, and every time she goes and does the scent work, the dog takes a tincture of milk thistle to protect the liver from those essential oils. Because the thing about those essential oils is they're bought in bulk. And they're cheap and they're not very high quality at all. So that's a sensitive subject. I'm not sure why those oils were picked for that sport, but they are.
Just what you said.
Yeah, because they're cheap and they're easy to produce, but they're all toxic to dogs, which is so unfortunate.
But the problem is the amounts are so small. You still recommend having because the dogs don't, yeah, I guess they smell them all the time, but what are some of the side effects of that? Because we haven't really, nose work, as you know, is very, very popular, and
it's very popular.
And we haven't had a lot of dogs get sick from that. Or
you're not going to see sickness. Those are neurotoxins. So you're going to have issues with the nervous system, which can just completely go unnoticed. So, and you'll see it as dementia and cognitive problems later on. The issue is they're not just smelling it once. They're smelling it all the time. So it's easy. You just want to protect the liver and the nervous system. So again, lion's mane, skullcap, milk thistle. If I had a dog doing nose work, those are the 3 things that I would keep them on.
Okay. We all do.
Yeah, I definitely would, because neurotoxins are different in that you could have a gait problem. You could have anything to do with the nervous system. You could have a dog that all of a sudden gets stuck in sympathetic excess and just is like wired. Again, cognitive problems or early onset dementia. It's attacking the nervous system for sure.
Okay. Yeah, it's like because I
is messing with the liver.
Yeah. Oh, because I saw that, but I think it was that makes a little more sense because I think it was taken out of context. It's like, oh, if they're it's going to kill them and blah blah blah. But I see what you mean. It's so because you're right. They're sniffing it all the time.
Yeah, it's not. It's they're not drinking it. They're not putting it on their bodies, but they are sniffing. I mean, if you're in a sport and you're doing it all the time, they're sniffing it all the time.
Right.
And these are cheap, usually adulterated oils. So, you know, they're just cheap and they're adulterated. And you got to remember, essential oils come from hundreds and hundreds of plants. Okay. They're not sustainable. Essential oil use is not sustainable as far as like environmental sustainability. It is for like peppermint and different things that are easy to grow and easy to cultivate. But they're made cheaply. And even if they were the best birch, the best clove, you know, on the planet, they're still toxic to dogs. Those oils are toxic.
So what are the three things again? Skullcap,
Thistle, lion's mane. And when you use lion's mane mushroom, more is not better. So you don't need a lot at all. And if you see any like neurological issues on lion's mane, you're using too much.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting. It's so interesting because I use mushroom for my dogs anyway on a regular. I always have. So that's so funny that inadvertently, because I do a lot of nose work, and
I don't think lion's mane would be in the one that you give though. It's a different. It is.
Yep.
Okay.
That's why I was like, oh.
Okay. Could you use the lion's mane tea similar to the other tea that you had mentioned? Like, or is it better?
Yeah. So if you're using like realmushrooms.com is the place to buy lion's mane, and they already hot water extract it and then dry it. But you want to use a hot water extraction of lion's mane, and for that particular thing. So if you're using like fresh or dried lion's mane that hasn't been hot water extracted, you want to hot water extract it. You want to put it in boiling water and then let it sit for like 15 to 20 minutes. If you're using the powder, and then put it on the food when it cools, including the material that you're making the tea. So including the lion's mane.
Yeah. So I have a question. So there's obviously preventative and supporting the immune system. What do you think? What is your take on the standard process products or the RX vitamin products?
I don't think I'm going to comment on that one.
Okay.
I'm gonna plead the fifth on standard process. Okay. I think standard. Okay, fine. I will answer it. Standard process is good in some formulas. I don't have a problem with them. I'm not a huge fan.
Okay. Is it just the processing or the
no, there's lots of things they overlap as far as herbalism is concerned. I think that when they first started out, they were really great. I think that quality has deteriorated. And I don't really support any company that supports the veal industry. So they use veal products in their formulas, in many formulas. And I, as a person and my ethics, I cannot support veal production. It's a horrid practice. And I don't think any animal deserves that. So, I mean, my dogs eat raw. I'm not saying that, but not the veal. Yeah. Right. So but from an herbal standpoint, there's lots of overlap. So like when I work with people and they're on standard process, they're usually on like 4 to 6 formulas all at one time. And I don't know where that comes from. It must be like a practitioner thing. And I have I don't know anything about that. But when you look at the ingredients of those formulas, there's so much overlap. And especially with like trace minerals, you're getting so much, and it's supposed to be a trace mineral. So I see a lot of mineral toxicity with that. Like we'll do hair analysis, and there'll be a really high level of those particular minerals in a dog's fur. And alfalfa is another one of their favorite ingredients. And alfalfa is great, but it causes diarrhea in larger amounts. So when you have that, overlap, when you're doing like 4 to 6 formulas, and plus, and I don't like magnesium stearate. There's some different fillers that have showed up in the standard process over the years after the founder died. I just think it's got kind of diluted. It's not my favorite supplement. I'd rather, for me, I want to know what's working. Like I want to know what ingredient is working, and they have a lot of ingredients. Now they do have a few products that I do like, and they're very singular products. They have very little ingredients in them, and those ones are, as far as I'm concerned, much more traceable and effective.
So as an herbalist, then you're more inclined to recommend specific like ingredients versus a specific product that carries multiple. Does that make sense? So like you're talking about skullcap and then lion's mane and so forth. You're thinking about doing it independently versus doing it in a specific product, so to speak.
It depends on the product. So like Adored Beast Apothecary, I don't know if you know who they are, but they have a really good line of products. 4-Leaf Rover has a really good line of products.
Okay.
They're intentionally made. There's not too many ingredients in them. When a formula has like 20 to 30 ingredients in it, and you're doing multiple formulas from that line, and there's so much overlap in the ingredients, it's really hard to figure out what's working. And so what happens is dogs end up on these formulas for so long, and you're not supposed to be on those things that long. So I don't think it's a standard process is a bad company or anything like that. I just don't like I don't like some of their formulas. For me, dogs are individuals. So what works for one golden retriever, okay, I tell my students all the time. So you have 4 golden retrievers. They all have arthritis, right? Every single one of them. This dog may respond to this combination of herbs. This dog's going to respond to that combination, and they're not anything alike. All 5 of them are successful in negating the effects of the arthritis and help bringing down that pain and inflammation, but none of the herbs are the same because dogs are individuals. And that's why it's so hard for some people to navigate herbalism. Yeah. It's a separate form of medicine, and it gets frustrating. So that's my goal in my life, is to help people understand, it's called energetics, that their dog is an individual and they have individual energetics, and they need to feed, like consistent feeding needs to be energetically appropriate. And so when you deal with that, which is another show, we can talk about it some other time, but when you deal with that, then you only have, like, there's some herbs that you wouldn't use. Like, for instance, turmeric, right? It's all the rage. Mm-hmm. If you have a dog that has a really hard time regulating their body temperature, that's really hot all the time, very sensitive to heat, you'd never catch them under the covers. They'll never lay by the heat vent. They're always on the cold tile, right? Giving them turmeric is going to be hotter. Giving them ginger, right? If you started giving them a product with ginger, they're going to get hotter and hotter and hotter. And it's not going to help. It's going to make things worse. And that's because they're a warm dog. So you would give them things like boswellia. The opposite of turmeric is boswellia, which is frankincense. And that is cooling, and that brings down heat. So you would give them things that decrease heat versus increase heat. Whereas if you had like a dog, let's just say a Vizsla, who's kind of on the skinny side, who's kind of on the skinny side, and who is always laying under the covers, wants to be covered up. He's all about, it's winter time and he's sitting in front of the furnace just baking, just, oh my God, I love it. Turmeric is excellent for that dog. So, the plants are individuals, and so are the dogs. So like my upcoming book is all about teaching people to how to learn about their dog's energetics and what herbs are good for that dog, and then taking those common canine conditions and giving you the choices. Okay, well, these will work for that dog and these should work for that dog. And then if you're going to use that, then you need to cool it down or you need to warm it up. So herbalism works on a system of opposites. So if you have a dog with too much heat, you're going to bring that heat down. If you have a dog that's too cold, you're going to heat them up. It's, you know, it's just the opposites. So, and I think that's what confuses people so much, is that a lot of people will try to map herbalism onto those pharmaceutical concepts, which we've all been conditioned for, where, like, you know, you ever see that meme where the guy is digging for a diamond and he's about this far from the diamond and he turns around? That always reminds me of herbalism, because it does. I'm just like, oh, if we would have just, herbs take time. Mm-hmm. Dogs did not get chronic. I'm not talking about chronic disease here. Chronic disease did not happen overnight, and people expect it to go away overnight. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't.
Yes. Tell me about it.
Of course, every now and then you get lucky, right? And you get lucky, and oh wow, that formula just worked like that, and that's great, but it's not the norm. Herbs take time. These imbalances take time. Finding the right diet for your dog takes time, and it takes patience. You know, it takes patience. And, you know, I work with humans and dogs, and like with my human clients, it's a lot easier because we can kind of talk about, okay, you know, how's it feel? What's going on? You know, what kind of improvements have you seen? Sometimes the improvements that we see happening inside our dogs, we can't see them right away, but they're happening. They're just not manifesting in the physical yet. But most herbs take between 6, 8, and 12 weeks to really start seeing a dramatic change. My protocols last about 12 weeks each. You know, we give it a good 12 weeks on the remedies, and we see if we're moving in the right direction. And that's the goal of any type of herbal regimen. Are we going forward? We might take 2 steps back, but we need to take 10 steps forward. We've got to be moving forward in like 6, 8, 12 weeks. If we go to the end of 12 weeks and no, dogs are not any better, don't keep using those herbs.
Mm-hmm. Right, because they're not
working. And like, for instance, I had a client that they filled out their paperwork and the dog was literally getting like 32 supplements. Okay. And here's what I did though. Like, I went through each supplement. I made sure, okay, is this supplement good for this dog? You know, we cut out almost everything. And then I built a protocol based on the supplements that actually did work for the dog. But I'll tell you right now, the dog was having side effects from being on all of those supplements. And they were given out of love and frustration. And so, you know, we never go down the rabbit hole of shoulda, woulda, coulda. We go forward. Mm-hmm. We need to know, you know, it's so easy just to fall down that kind of like shame game. Mm-hmm. And we don't want that blame and shame. You know, we want to say, okay, that didn't work. I'm going to move forward. And what are we going to do now? And what do we want to see? And what do we want to try? And what are we going to do? And that's the most important part. Find out what works for your dog. And usually, you know, if you get a little guidance from somebody and not Father Google, if you get a little guidance of some holistic vet or a professional, an herbalist or whatever, if you don't know what you're doing, you can usually, you know, get on the right path. Like this little book, I had it out for you guys. This is a great starter book, this Herbs for Pets by Greg Kilford. It's easy to use, and it kind of gives you some information about plants. If anytime I speak, I tell people this: if you want to find out about an herb, so like if say, for instance, you're like, I think ginger would be good for my dog. I think it would. And I need to find out more about ginger. If you put ginger in Google, WebMD is going to come up. Okay. That's not who you need advice from. Father Google is not going to help you unless you know what you need to tell him. Okay. Him or her. I'm not sure who he is. You put in the word monograph, the ginger monograph. You put those two together, and that is going to give you that herb's resume. And you'll find an herbalist that is writing about ginger or whatever herb you're talking about. You may have to look at the 3rd and the 4th page. I know it's not on the first page. People panic. But now the first page of most search engines are ads and things for really big companies. You kind of have to go in a little farther. Monograph, the herb's name and monograph. And you will find people writing that's going to tell you where to find it, like what its energetics are, what its contraindications are, when to use it, what not to use it, what it does in the body. In herbalism, we have this word called affinity, and what affinity it has, what systems it has. Like ginger has an affinity towards the musculoskeletal system and the gut. Okay. And so, that's how you really find out about an herb. And that's what you should do. You should find as much information about that herb that you plan on giving your dog. Don't go in blindly. Right. And then, Nancy was talking about formulas. There's lots of good formulas. Like I said, that the Adored Beast, 4-leaf rover, that company called Pet Wellbeing. Then you have Glacier Peaks. They have some good herbal formulas. Deb is their owner. She's an excellent herbalist. You have the more TCM, which is traditional Chinese medicine. Herbsmith. Mm-hmm. Herbsmith is an excellent herbal company for dogs and cats. Animal Essentials, excellent company for dogs and cats. I have a website called Canine Herbalist. I have some stuff on there. I carry all the Adored Beasts and the 4-leaf rover. I carry some Animal Essentials. It's hard as an independent because you have to purchase bulk of, you have to purchase a lot of what you want to carry. But there's some really good companies out there that make some good formulas. But you just have to figure out if that formula is good for your dog. Right.
And I think it's probably better to talk to somebody like you or somebody that knows a little bit more, because it's like you said, there's some contraindications on some stuff that I would really be concerned about, making my dog worse or
absolutely
doing something that maybe shouldn't be happening. Somebody asked about turkey tail mushroom, because I do have my dogs on that as well.
Turkey tail is a neutral mushroom. I've learned that it's a neutral mushroom. That means it's good for, it's good for both energetics, cool and warm dogs. It's an immune modulator, mm-hmm. and that's what we really need right now is immune modulators, not immune stimulants. We want to modulate the immune system so that it corrects itself. It's anti-tumor. It's anti-cancer. Yeah. It helps support the immune system. I love turkey tail mushroom. It's not for every dog, mm-hmm. But it definitely is for a lot of them. You can see a real benefit. It's really great at keeping lipomas from getting bigger. You want to give, a higher amount for that purpose. If your dog has lipomas and you find that they're getting bigger. So it's a really good mushroom. Sometimes it helps shrink those lipomas. It has an effect upon the liver's detoxification process, which is good. Most mushrooms do. But you kind of have to give a little bit more. And dosage is tricky. So, but for a German Shepherd, let's just go say your German Shepherd had a lipoma, I would give that dog probably 2 to 3 grams a day.
Okay.
1.5 grams twice a day. And the best thing to do with mushrooms is give them away from food if your dog's stomach can handle it. Sometimes it upsets the tummy. Mm-hmm. And if that's so, give it with a little bit of food, but like give it in like raw goat's milk or in some bone broth or just a little bit of food, just a tiny bit, just enough to get your dog to eat it. Mushrooms work better that way.
Oh, really? Because I've been giving it to my dogs in their food.
Yeah, I would stop. I would give it to them. And
separate
a
away.
little bit of food, just a tiny little bit of food. You know what I'm saying?
And then how long would you wait to feed them their breakfast or whatever? Because I give it to them twice.
Oh, maybe about 40 minutes.
Okay, my lab might have a cow, but
yeah, I'm sure your lab will probably try to, you know,
she'll be like, what?
Like,
yeah.
handle this.
She'll be like, what's happening?
What's happening? What's wrong?
So I do have a question in regards to like this in comparison to, and maybe this is, you know, I'll just ask it, but with the Chinese herbs and so forth.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, because I mean, I have my vet's holistic, and she does Chinese herbs, but you know, we do different kinds of things, and so she's kind of an integrative approach, which I really appreciate it. But I guess I'm kind of curious as an herbalist what your take is on that.
Okay, so a lot of vets who have taken classes at the Qi Institute, which teaches Chinese medicine, my colleague Josie Bug teaches there. They learn like the basics of what to apply, and they learn acupuncture there. Mm-hmm. I am not a Chinese herbalist, a traditional Chinese TCVM herbalist. I'm definitely not that. I do use Chinese herbs in my practice, like astragalus, ashwagandha, different things like that. They kind of overlap in what I call Western herbalism, which is called Western herbalism, which has nothing to do with Western medicine. It's just different types of herbs. But traditional Chinese medicine tends to they'll use either what's called tea pills, which is a little like a wax-coated pill, or they'll use, not for dogs. For dogs, it would be almost impossible. But for humans, you could get herbs that was like a pile, and you make teas out of them, and decoctions, which is like a low simmer. But for dogs, they use pills. And a lot of the herbs are not found anywhere near here. They're found in China and different parts of Asia. And there's lots of them in the formulas, okay? There's nothing wrong with traditional Chinese medicine herbs. They're awesome. They can work really well if the practitioner knows what they're doing. But like another favorite company of mine is a company called Paw Healer, okay? And I am not a traditional Chinese medicine herbalist, but I do use some of the Paw Healer remedies that I love. They're like a paw licking remedy they have. It's just basically herbs that drain heat. They have 4 lipoma remedies. Well, basically not all lipoma, but lumps and bumps remedies. They give you kind of like some symptoms to pick the remedy. I really like those. And nothing wrong with that at all. And so, in fact, sometimes I spec some of the healer remedies in my protocols. But just traditional Chinese medicine is another completely different system of medicine. Like Ayurveda, I studied that in my 20s. Completely different system of medicine. There are some overlaps. Like I use traditional Chinese medicine diagnostics. So it's traditional Chinese medicine or Chinese medicine in general that teaches us about aggression in the liver and worry and fear in the kidney. Like, for instance, when dogs come to me they're afraid, they're reactive on leash, they don't like thunderstorms, they don't like fireworks, they react to all different types of noises, right? And what calming herbs can I use? I actually don't do many calming herbs. What I do is I balance out the kidney function. You get a balanced kidney, those stairs come down to here. Then we use calming herbs and flower essences to calm that down and mitigate those symptoms. But I always kidney first with fear, reactivity, and worry. and like step banks and things like that. Diet, for me, is always first. And then we add in our calming herbs. You know, skullcap is one of my favorites. Milky oats, hops, different. I mean, there's just so many different lovely lemon balm. If the dog doesn't have hypothyroid, you know, certain things like that, different things to calm down, passion flower, California poppy, things like that. So there is some overlap for me, but again, they're all different systems of medicine. And like Chinese medicine, it can get so complicated that it can take 2 lifetimes. You got to kind of have to pick your niche in it, like what you want to do. And same with herbalism, you have to pick your niche. You know, for me, for instance, like wild lettuce is a great pain reliever. It's not one I use on dogs. So like I have my human herbs, and then I have my dog herbs, and the herbs that I use most for dogs and herbs that I most for humans. Some of them overlap, but some of them don't.
Right. So, yeah, this has been great, and we could keep talking on that. So you guys, a couple of things I put in the comments, I put Rita's link to her website for Rita also does online courses on herbalism. So could you tell us a little bit about that? And then I also put to get show notes, there's a little link there, so you can click on it, and you can we can because there's so much information, we're gonna get some show notes and send them to you. I'm not going to use your email for anything but this particular.
Yep. And before she even comments, I'm going to tell you guys, go to her website. She has a free webinar on flea, like how to deal herbs with fleas. It's awesome. So make sure you watch it. It's really good and educational.
Yep.
So,
and I put the link for that. I did put the link for that on the very top, but on the very top, there's also a link for that as well. So could you tell us about your online courses? Because I haven't had a chance, because I was looking at it, but I haven't. I'm like, I got to figure out when I'm going to do that. So
I will just if you do click on my Linktree link, there's a link in there for signing up as interested in my upcoming book that's coming out next year. It's called The Herbal Dog, and I will be including cat dosages in there. That would be really great. I don't market or anything. You'll just get notified when it's ready for pre-order. My courses right now, I have a course platform. It's called canineherbalism.com. That's in the Linktree link as well. I have a canine energetics course, which teaches you how to figure out your dog's energetics and also all of the herbs that go along with your individual dog for that. It's a really amazing course. People love it. And then I have a monthly monograph, which is 1 herb a month that we do in an intensive on. And it's a really great way to learn herbs, because by the end of the year, you've got 12 herbs that you have really good notes on that you can use very kind of like a matter of a choice, like you know how to use it. I've got that on there. I have a subscription community that it's $10 a month, and you can ask me any questions you want. And you can post about your dogs, and people post. It's kind of like Facebook, but we're not censored. So I love my subscription community. And it gives a lot of value, because, you know, my consults are $85 an hour. My Ask the Herbalist function on my website is between $20 and $30. And my subscription community is $10. So it's a really cheap way to get my opinion on something, because I answer my subscription community questions on a daily basis. This next spring, I'll be coming out with my level 1 canine herbalism course.
Oh, so fun.
That deals with chronic disease, and it'll teach you, and it will eventually lead to people that want to practice canine herbalism. But you can take like the first level 1 and level 2 just for yourself. The level 3 will be more for people that want to practice.
Yeah. Well, wow, this is awesome. So much information. It's like, so, and some stuff that, you know, some stuff that we all of us dog people, we do we incorporate into our we're already doing. But like the mushroom powder for me, I was putting it in their food, so that was a good to know. So I can change
You'll
that.
just get better results if it's not in the food.
Yeah. So now I have to talk to the lab about how I'm going to do that. But
it needs to be in his, maybe he's the guy where it's going in your food, buddy. We're doing it, Yeah.
Well, no, she'll live. She'll just be not happy about it.
I think you should just add lunch. She'll be super happy about that.
Yes, she will. She will. All right. Thank you, Rita, for joining us. It was awesome. We really had a great time. Thank you all for coming. Like I said, all the links, we are going to do show notes for this because this was so much information. So if you give us your email, I'll make sure we send you the show notes for this particular show. So
and also on my link tree, I do have a podcast that I put out every other week.
Awesome.
Cool.
Awesome. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.